Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with my review of NXT 2.0 for December 7th, 2021. Of course, it's the show after War Games that happened on Sunday. A lot of big moments, some torch passing moments we may have seen on that pay-per-view. And we're going to see how that translates into the future of regular weekly programming. We'll get to that, but first, like what you like, don't be a dick. The show begins with a cage match as former tag team partners implode. Kyle O'Reilly thwarted Von Wagner's betrayal after their tag title match on Sunday and called him out to a cage match here tonight. Kyle even jumps Von in the middle of Wagner's entrance. This match is a fine wrestling match, but it's just visually obscured by this chain link wall. Like, you didn't need the cage. If you're gonna have the cage for a stipulation, like, use it, I would say. It was used very sparingly. Like I said, the wrestling itself was fine, but you just didn't need the cage for as little as they used it for up until after the match, which I'll get to in a second. Von falls at the top rope, and Kyle hits that big top rope flying, knee drop, the same move he used to beat Adam Cole earlier this year. And Von kicks out. A low blow by Wagner, a few throws into the cage wall, butterfly suplex for Wagner to win. So pretty big. It's obviously the biggest win in Von's career. It's his biggest match to date, even bigger than the tag title match he had on Sunday. And I think he did pretty well here. I've been getting increasingly impressed with Wagner's presentation and how he comes off in the ring here. I think this is, his best match to date. Afterward, though, you've got this moment here where Von looks to leave the ring, but he goes back in. He hangs Kyle upside down in the corner and slams the cage door into his face repeatedly, and this feels like, they're riding him out. We saw some signs of that, on Sunday when he threw up the Undisputed Era sign after knocking down Von, and all the rumors of his contract status. So, and also the promo we get from Von Wagner afterward, later in the show, feels like they've kind of written Kyle off for this point. So if this is the end, then I think Kyle had a pretty darn good run. Of course, he was part of the Undisputed Era from the beginning, one of those original members, and then his feud with Adam Cole, even though it was a bit hamstrung by the pandemic, I think that he and Cole still delivered some very good matches. And his kind of post stuff with Finn, the stuff with Finn Balor he did before he feuded with Cole was great as well. So yeah, I think Kyle did really well for himself. He never won the NXT Championship, but that does not necessarily mean he had a bad time or a bad run at NXT. I think he did very well. There's a promo package from Joe Gacy where he says the outcome of his match with Roderick Strong on Sunday wasn't as important as the overall mission that they were trying to accomplish and the vision that Joe Gacy has. He says, they broke down barriers and ended division. By the sheer virtue of them having a match, he actually wants to change the name of 205 Live, he says, to make it more inclusive. He does put over Harland and says, people have never understood him. They've kind of chastised him, or they made fun of him for being a big man, but they've never asked about the size of his heart. He says Harland will have his in-ring debut next week. But can we talk for a second about that opening statement by Gacy in the promo? Basically, he says, it's okay that I lost because the wins and losses don't matter to me. Like, hey, I'm just saying, like, Bray Wyatt tried to use that as an excuse for a long time, and it didn't work out for him either. Braun Breaker makes his way to the ring, and he cuts right to the chase. He talks about how, Tommaso Ciampa beat me at Halloween Havoc. I beat him at War Games. It's now even, so he challenges Ciampa to a rubber match for the championship. But then the Diamond Mine come out. Malcolm Bivens calls him LeBron Breaker, and he says that Roderick Strong is looking for more competition and he wants to fight Braun next week, and so Breaker accepts. I will say I'm kind of impressed, or I'm very surprised the fact that Roderick lately seems to be kind of going out of his wheelhouse, wrestling people who are bigger than him, like Joe Gacy on Sunday and Braun Breaker next week. Is the competition in the Cruiserweight division really that slim right now that Strong can't find too many people kind of in his own weight class? Then the Creed brothers stick around for their matchup next against Briggs and Jensen. GYV join the announce desk for this match. As soon as the bell rings, though, Imperium show up on the villains balcony to, I guess, oversee and kind of scout their future opponents, it seems here. Julius and Beef working very well together against their opponents. GYV at one point continuing their little shenanigans. They steal the tag rope out of Briggs and Jensen's corner, and then when it's time for the tag, Briggs is like, oh no, where's the rope? I can't make a tag without the rope. And then he makes the hot tag, and the ref's like, no, there's no rope there. There's no way you could have tagged. There's no rope. But the plan backfires as Jensen actually rolls up one of the Creeds in all the chaos and confusion to win the match in kind of an upset. Oh, those silly young vets. Will they ever learn? Also, I guess, was this a way to protect the Creed brothers against a future tag title match with Imperium? Make it not heel versus heel or whatever. I don't imagine Briggs and Jensen are going to win the tag belts if they face Imperium. Imperium next, but I guess, like, did the Creeds have to lose another match in such a fluky manner? Von Wagner interviewed backstage about what happened earlier. He says that War Games is over, Kyle is over, and now his own personal War Games have just begun. He goes to leave, and then at the end of the shot, you see Robert Stone kind of rush in, but he misses his chance to, I guess, recruit Von. I will have to say, I am very curious about Von's new little wrinkle added to his character, being this now defined heel. I think one of the biggest problems I had with him the last couple of months was he was so ill-defined. You really couldn't make, heads or tails of what this character was. Now that he actually has like a motivation and he is a baddie, like, that's something. It's not nothing, and we'll see if this helps. Then it's time for Duke Hudson to make his way to the ring. You might recall he did lose the hair versus hair match on Sunday, but here he is coming out wearing an Estelle Getty wig, and he says, oh, Cameron Grimes thought he shaved me bald, but joke's on you, because as you can see, I clearly have a full head of hair. And he's trying really hard to convince the fans, but you can see he has some doubts about that and everything. And then he says Cameron Grimes is a disappointment and a failure. Grimes comes out, and you can see Duke putting some wrestling headgear on his wig to support it. I thought that was pretty great moment there. Duke cannot accept the fact that Grimes beat him on Sunday because Cameron did grab the tights in that roll-up. So Cameron says, okay, let's have one more match. Let it be no holds barred. Duke accepts. The two of them have a bit of a tussle after the word, and then Grimes stands tall in the end. I guess we're going to be having that match next week. I will say, judging by how this angle has been booked, I would not be at all shocked if Duke got the win back in their no holds barred match, but there will be an unwigging at some point in the end. We see Briggs and Jensen hanging out backstage after their big win when Jacket Time show up to congratulate them. Of course, last time we saw Ikemen Jiro, he was taking a big old shit in the middle of the War Games pay-per-view. GYV show up and are mad at Briggs and Jensen because their shenanigans helped them get to that point. Then suddenly, Casey Catanzaro and Caden Carter's walk by saying, we have generic concert tickets. Who wants to have them? And then Briggs and Jensen walk after them. And then Zach Gibson punches Ikemen Jiro right in the mush, and they start fighting for a bit. And then as that breaks up, in the background you see Karen Q, the former Mei Ying, who I was asking who is this woman last week, and y'all told me. The former Mei Ying, Karen Q, she gets up and she's all woken up again, and she goes back down behind the counter. So she goes from being this like supernatural smoke-breathing dragon woman to just a lady who's asleep all the time. Outside the building, Grayson Waller tries to hit on a lady, but she has other plans already with LA Knight, who makes fun of Grayson, and the two of them drive off in LA's fancy sports car, and Grayson looks proper miffed. It's important to keep that little information in your head for later. We got Carmelo Hayes versus Dexter Lumis up next, and Carmelo is still selling the effects of the War Games match on Sunday, and the story here is that Trick Williams is the latest victim of Dexter Lumis. First, it was Roderick Strong, then it was Austin Theory, and now Trick Williams is the latest person to be added to the potential victim list for Lumis here. That's a story we saw on Sunday, and here we saw it a couple of times as well, where during the match, Lumis would just glare at Trick or stalk him for a second. And Trick's body language, by the way, and his selling for this is pretty entertaining. There's some good back and forth here. Both guys get plenty of time to shine. Dexter gets the silence locked in on Carmelo. Then Trick just hits him in the face in front of the referee for a blatant disqualification. And so then Dexter grabbing Trick for a second, but Hayes is able to pull him off and save him here. DQ finishes after relatively lengthy matches are always disappointing, but things do seem to be building toward a proper continuation of the feud between Lumis and Hayes. I'm guessing for the North American Championship at some point, so we'll see how that goes. So after weeks of speculation, we finally find out who is the MSK Shaman, and it turns out it's one half of the current Raw Tag Team Champions, Riddle. The NXT alum is the surprise guest here this week, and we see a scene where he's sitting down with Lee and Carter amongst some candles and trying to ask him some questions like, was our success earlier this year with a Dusty Classic and the tag titles, was it too much too soon? And Riddle brings up the fact that he and Pete Dunne won the same stuff last year. I miss the Broserweights. I miss Stallion Pete. And so Riddle tells them you don't need to change. You can still keep being yourselves because you guys have been together through every step of the way. And Riddle now says he's going to join them on their journey, which does that mean we're going to see more of Riddle on NXT now? And then what's in the bag? Whoa, vague weed references. Whoa. So that payoff I didn't expect. They had John Morrison just right there waiting for this kind of moment, but they released him obviously. So I don't know if Riddle was the plan all along, or if this was just like, we got to find some way to make this work. I do think it's interesting that Riddle's double dipping here because he is on Raw very prominently, obviously, and here he's back on NXT. I do like the idea though of having like NXT alum from like the old era occasionally popping in to give the rub to like the 2.0 stars, kind of like what we saw with the first episode of the 2.0. We saw Damian Priest show up for a minute for the wedding. It wasn't much, but it shows that universe is kind of like open-ended. You can have people kind of like traverse across the plane, NXT regular, NXT 2.0. So I don't know how long Riddle, if he is going to be at ringside with MSK, or if that's just going to be a one-time thing. He'll be there in spirit or what, and they'll carry Riddle's like weed bag with him or what, I don't know, as his representation. But yeah, what did you think of Riddle being revealed as the Shaman? Let me know what you think in the comments. There's a scene backstage with Persia Parada and Indy Hartwell where Persia's like, great, now that Dexter Lumis is back, you can finally stop being so weird about everything. You can finally focus, get your head in the game. I need my friend here so we can win the NXT Women's Tag Team Championships. And of course, Indy forgets all that because her husband DEXY shows up in the room and they embrace. And then suddenly Johnny Gargano walks in and he's so happy to see the family back together. They have a group hug while Persia just kind of looks on in utter confusion. Then up next, Gigi Dolan and JC Jane of Toxic Attraction have a non-title match against Valentina Feroz and Yulisa Leon. Leon holding her own pretty well here against JC Jane. I loved especially her kind of twisting Samoan drop she did near the end of the match here. There's a hot tag. I put it in quotes because the tag, it was a hot tag by definition, but the crowd wasn't very hot for it. Anyway, though, Jane with a big kick to Leon's face to win the match for her team. Mandy Rose on the mic afterwards celebrating for her team, and she says, who's going to be next? Who's our next challengers? Anyone? It's open to anyone, she says. Then Cora Jade shows up and she says, hey, I beat you 2 weeks ago in a singles match. I won the War Games match, so I should be the next one in line. And Mandy wants to make an example out of her, but then Raquel Gonzalez shows up to make the save with a steel chair, and that's where that ends. And so then we see a segment backstage later on where you got Cora and you got Raquel talking, and Raquel's like, hey, I deserve the first shot at the championship, not you. So I don't know what that's going to lead to. But I thought that was interesting stuff, building Cora Jade more. I mean, she's a real kind of, to me, an unexpected, potential breakout star at NXT. Someone who I didn't really, think much of going into War Games, became kind of like one of the big stars of her respective match. And, she's very young. She's talented already for her age. The sky's the limit. We'll have to see what her upside is. But so far, I'm slowly but surely getting behind Cora Jade here in this scene. We get a Tiffany Stratton vignette, and this one actually talks a bit about her athletic background, her legitimate experience in gymnastics, and how she went on the Olympic team for Team USA in 2016. And the only thing better than a gold medal is the NXT Women's Championship. And then we see backstage Tony D'Angelo being interviewed about War Games. He talks about Pete Dunne, and that he showed Dunne on Sunday he's not someone to cross, and he still has Dunne's mouth guard that he pulled out of his own mouth mid-match as a souvenir. So things not done with them yet. Andre Chase walks in though and said that if Tony had listened to his lectures and advice, then Tony would have been the star of that match and not Grayson Waller. So Tony does not like where this is going and challenges Andre to a match next week. Your main event match sees Santos Escobar taking on Zion Quinn. This match is several weeks in the making, and it's all revolving around this tension between Zion and Elektra Lopez. This is a good test for Zion, by the way. Easily his biggest match to date since his debut. Elektra occasionally will distract Quinn with some passing glances now and then, like after Zion hits his flippy, spinny slam, like Elektra looks at him once. There's a double down after a big Frankensteiner by Zion. Elektra slips some brass knuckles onto Zion's hand, which he's confused about where this came from and everything, and that allows Santos to pick up the win in the confusion with the big knee and the Phantom Driver. So that was a good match, a good test, I think passed by Zion here. I like his look. I like what he does in the ring. I'm not hating the storyline right now with Elektra and he and Santos. Honestly, the one thing that I can't really get behind is the name. There's a vignette from Boa directed toward Idris Enofe where he says, you don't know what you did, what beast you've awakened here. So he challenges him to a match next week. They are really stacking next week with a lot of big matches, it seems. And then finally, to close out the show, Johnny Gargano addresses the NXT crowd to address his future. There's all the speculation after what we saw on Sunday. He's looking very emotional as he makes makes his way to the ring, again coming out to Rebel Heart. Johnny making a La Femme Nikita reference, which I appreciated having watched wrestling in the late 90s, but I think the crowd in NXT was a bit too young there to get the joke. So he talks about, his journey in wrestling, how in 2015 he had a tryout there and how he was specifically told he would not be in NXT, but then thanks to William Regal, he got another shot, and the fans helped kind of get behind Johnny wrestling, and that's what helped get him to stay in NXT. And he puts over the fans, and he puts over all the people behind the scenes that make NXT work, so that was a really nice touch. And he talks about, sometimes change is hard, but it needs to happen, and that you will never fail if you bet on yourself, which was some great inspiring words there. Gargano wraps it up by talking about how he's going to be a family man starting in February, but as he's talking about that, Grayson Waller, because he was C-blocked by LA Knight. He's so full of rage. He attacks Johnny Gargano with the chair, beats him up for a bit, slams him through the announce table, and the show ends, goes to black there. So Gargano's big presumed farewell address is cut off by the smarmy newcomer, Grayson Waller. Now, I don't know if this means they're going to build to an angle, if they're swerving us all this time, or if we're going to get Johnny versus Grayson in the near future, or if this is just how they've written Gargano off. Kind of like what we thought maybe happened with Kyle O'Reilly earlier, where it's like, hey, like he's just beating up on his way out. It's a very humble move. It's very giving of Gargano to go out in that way and put over Grayson and make him like one of the new big bads in NXT, someone that people can really just despise because, hey, you just took Johnny Gargano out. There are pictures online tonight of what happened after the show went off the air, where it's kind of a curtain call thing where Johnny's there with Shawn Michaels and Tommaso Ciampa. So it does seem like this is the end, of Gargano's run there. It felt like a very much of a farewell kind of thing. So I don't think they're turning it into an angle here based on that. It just seems like this is just the way they're going to write him off. They're going to have him go down, like putting Grayson Waller over, like I said. There's worse ways to do it. I think that this was kind of the right way to do it. So again, Gargano, thank you so much for your run at NXT. I'm sure a lot of fans echo that sentiment, and whatever happens to he and Kyle O'Reilly in the future, I think a lot of fans are going to be waiting with bated breath on that one. My grade for this week's NXT is a solid B here. I thought this was a fine episode. I will say this, like I said, they set up a ton of matches next week. Like, it was just really alarming almost how much they built to it. And like, it's a lot of the matches don't have like massive stakes either. There's not like title matches. It's just like, hey, here are all these conflicts that we were setting up this week to go to the next week, and it all flows and makes sense. I do like how so many of like those 2.0 stars got a lot of moments to shine on this show. Like, you got your Von Wagner, you got your Grayson Waller, and you got your Zion Quinn and stuff like that. And I think they all did very well given their respective positions and stuff. So I think that right now 2.0 is doing a pretty good job making you care and giving, definite like character traits to these new faces. But what did you think of the show this week, folks? Let me know in the comment section below. Quick word of warning, tomorrow night I might not be able to do the Dynamite review. And the reason for that is I'm getting my COVID booster shot tomorrow morning, and I don't know how I'll be feeling that night when I'm watching and reviewing Dynamite usually. So in case I'm not able to make it tomorrow night, I'm going to use this chance to deliver a message to the viewers right now. Folks, this Saturday is the end of an era. It's Ring of Honor's Final Battle pay-per-view. It's happening on pay-per-view and Honor Club. This show is going to be amazing. I'm going to tell you right now, every man and woman on that card and all those matches are going to do everything they can to give you, the audience, some of the best wrestling on the planet, and we're going to make sure ROH goes out with a bang in the end of an era. We don't know what ROH, the future of this company, is going to look like after December 11th, but we do know that on this show on Saturday, it's not going to be one to forget. And I'm going to say this right now, if you appreciate good wrestling and if you appreciate what Ring of Honor has done for professional wrestling in this country and throughout the world for the last 20 years, you owe it to yourself to buy this pay-per-view or go buy a ticket in Baltimore, Maryland to see this action live, because like I said, it's an historic show. It's a bittersweet show. There's going to be some tears shed. There's going to be some amazing moments happening. And so all I can say is that you will not regret buying this show and watching Final Battle, End of an Era. If I can't give you that message tomorrow night, I'm saying it right now. So go order on pay-per-view. If you're an Honor Club member, go check that out. ROH Final Battle, the End of an Era. It's not a show you're going to want to miss. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.